And of course, the problem with a plan is what happens when it all goes to hell, because children are sick, projects land at work, things happen that physically wipe out your entire week. So having that plan in place is one thing, but you then also have to be flexible. We go again with another episode of the Smart Strength Training Podcast. I'm Andy Vincent, and this is podcast episode 45. And today I'm talking about motivation and really what keeps people consistent. And this is the second time I've covered consistency when it comes to exercise, because it's really important. And this time of year, summer holidays, potentially for families, have children back at home, it's harder to stay consistent with training. And then lots of kind of expressions around, how do I stay motivated? How do you stay motivated all year round? Start to really crop up. So I wanted to do a sort of timely podcast to sort of cover this topic. So first of all, I want to make sure that we just normalize dips in motivation. Any person that trains year after year, they're going to have periods where it's just harder to sort of get up and go. Sometimes that's aligned to the seasons. Like I said, right now, summer holidays, things like Christmas when it's colder. So that's a very clear thing that's going to dip mood overall. But of course, even outside of that, things are still going to sort of drift a little bit. And it's just important to say that is totally normal. I really like the book Exercise by an author, Dan Lieberman, who is a human anthropologist and has done studies in effectively evolution and how its effects on biology. And he speaks in length in the book around, you go back through human history, and we have always had to conserve energy to forage for food and to reproduce. So this sort of like burning energy in the pursuit of leisure very much is a modern thing. It's the last 100 years. So don't be surprised that tens of thousands of years of evolution potentially might get in the way of you wanting to go for a run, even though that going for a run is important because it's aligned to the fact that life is trending in a direction where we are being more and more sedentary. So therefore, we do need to try and offset that with periods of being highly active, but then also recognizing that we are literally designed to want to conserve energy at all costs. So one thing I really hate in this space is usually young trainers saying, oh, you need to be more disciplined. Like, look at me, aren't I really disciplined doing my 6 a.m. whatever? And the reality is, like, adults are very disciplined at various things. It might be looking after children, it might be starting a business or your work overall. It might be looking after sick relatives or sick loved ones. There's so many things that take people's sort of focus overall, and their discipline has to go in that direction. And yeah, of course, there will be a subsection of people that do just need to have more focus overall on exercise. But for the majority of people that listen to my podcast and that I engage with, they are highly aware they should be exercising and want to exercise. It's just challenging to stick to it year on year. And that's where I think the word discipline is just really, really poor, because it's not the sort of thing, or telling someone they're not disciplined enough is not the sort of thing that's going to help them move forward. So words I do prefer are momentum initially, and then making it a priority, which is probably the biggest one overall. So initially getting involved in training, it creates momentum. And I think the nice thing to understand around motivation as a word is people are usually highly motivated at first. When someone embarks on a fitness journey, it may be because of a reason, maybe they go on a holiday, maybe they had a health scare, maybe there's lots of reasons that people start things. So motivation is usually very high at the start. Then generally speaking, motivation for those that have particular goals, like running a marathon, like having a deadline, motivation stays really high towards the end. But then we notice sort of like drops in motivation in the middle. So motivation, we know, isn't going to be there all the time. Momentum is great at first because it creates habits. It gets you into the routine of doing sessions 3 times per week. And momentum can be very, very useful. But of course, momentum can slow down. And that's where sort of prioritizing it becomes really important. And why prioritizing it is always quite hard is because we're talking about time. And time is precious. So if we go back to the idea that people have got kids, they've got work to think about, sick family members to look after, it's about where does exercise sit in that sort of hierarchy of what's important. Exercise can be really, really important to someone, but they'll still have challenges sort of getting it done and fitting it in, which is why I think then above prioritizing it, we also need to make sure we have some sort of plan in place. I think it's all good and well thinking to yourself, I want to train 3 times per week, but realistically thinking about how you're going to fit those sessions in, how long those sessions are going to be, because there's loads of things that could trip someone up and make it really, really hard to achieve the sessions they plan to do. Because doing sessions, even if it's 30 minutes, you still got to find that time. You've got to shower afterwards as well. So it might mean doing the sessions first thing in the morning before the family's up. So if you're doing it first thing in the morning, that means you've got to go to bed at a certain time to make sure you can get up, feel rested, and then go. One of the challenges with morning training is it takes a little while to sort of adjust to what it feels like energy-wise to train first thing in the morning. So it might take someone 4, 5, 6 weeks to even get into the flow of feeling like they're getting half decent workouts in because they just haven't adjusted to that time frame. That's a lot of time to sort of like fall out of love of moving training to the first thing in the morning. So we have to really, really appreciate the sort of challenges that anyone faces when it comes to training overall. But I think what I like about the sort of planning is it does then help, again, prioritize it in your mind and move up in sort of hierarchy of how you approach the week. Let's say you're planning the children's birthdays and social calendar and their sporting events, whatever, and you're looking at your either wall planner calendar or your diary on your phone. Having that ability to, whilst you're doing that, so you're scheduling and planning the most important element of your week, so either work or family, getting exercise in there at the same time can be really, really useful. I've spoken about on the podcast before, one thing that I do that really works really well for me and it works really well for my clients too, is I have exercise as a repeating event in my electric calendar. Obviously, my laptop has it on it. So I see it straight away. And when I come to the next week, I can just move those around really easily. Obviously, that's nice when it's electronic. If you're using a wall calendar, it's not so easy, but you maybe can make some notes at the side of the calendar just to sort of put in the workouts where they need to go. But I do think making sure you have something in place to help you plan to prioritize your training is really important. And of course, the problem with a plan is what happens when it all goes to hell, because children are sick, projects land at work, things happen that physically wipe out your entire week. So having that plan in place is one thing, but you then also have to be flexible, because let's say you plan to train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and your project lands on a Wednesday morning and you're instantly sucked into work first thing, and that Wednesday session doesn't get done. Well, if you're the sort of person that wants to train 3 times per week and you miss your Wednesday slot straight away, potentially you might just go, screw it, what's the point? I can't get all my sessions in this week. I failed this week. I'll start next week. Whereas if you've got a more flexible approach to it, and potentially you could train later in the day, potentially you could move a workout to Friday or over the weekend, or just make peace with the fact that it's okay to do 2 workouts in 1 week or one workout in a week. When people plan to train 3 times per week, that doesn't mean consistency equals achieving all 3 sessions per week. It just means keeping going and being able to make peace with the fact that some weeks might end up being 2 sessions per week and some weeks might be 1 session per week is really, really powerful. And I don't perceive 3 sessions per week to be better than 1 session per week. I actually think maybe the opposite is true, because the 1 session per week showed that they were still able to be flexible and keep going with training. Because what I often see when people are so rigid at wanting to do 3 times per week and they're not able to do it, they start having lots and lots of chunks of the year where they're not exercising at all because they're not able to get all their sessions in. Whereas the person that is able to be flexible and go down to 1 or 2 sessions is much more likely to maintain that momentum. So I just think that flexible approach can be really, really powerful. And you're not going to be missing sessions then. I would just say to stay in the flow that your sessions sit in anyways. If you've got a 3-part workout, let's say 3 full body strength workouts or 2 full body strength workouts and 1 run, then you would just run that order. You'd stay in the order. You do day 1, day 2, run, day 1, day 2, run. So if you happen to miss the run on a particular week, you'd start the next week with the run, then you do day 1, day 2, and you just stay in the flow those sessions sit in, and then you never actually miss a session, and that outlines consistency perfectly. So like just redefining in your mind what consistency really means to you is a really great way to maintain that momentum, to maintain that prioritizing exercise. And then we can sort of like get rid of words like discipline and just really think about it about being kind of organized with the way that you approach exercise, because as much as some people can fit it in just here and there, I think for a lot of people that's not going to be enough. So I think having something in place to make sure that you're able to adhere to it long term is a much smarter thing to do. So just to finish up, to circle back to what I said at the start, let's just normalize dips in mood and motivation. I do also think this is a nice time to talk about exercise variety. When I'm working with my clients, I'll be building sort of 12 or 16 week training blocks. And at the end of a 16-week period, you get a brand new workout to train with. And that's really nice. So you know that every 3 or 4 months, what you're walking into the gym or in your training space is going to be brand new, super, super exciting, lots of newness. If you know you generally struggle with dips in mood and that's aligned to sort of like boredom in training, then maybe you rotate your program a bit more frequently and maybe doing it every 12 weeks. I spoke on my podcast around how to design a workout. I don't think that an 8-week program is probably going to give someone enough repeated bouts and skill practice to be efficient. I do think either 12 or 16 weeks is better. But if you are the sort of person that likes a bit more newness, you can go down towards that lower end. But if you are the kind of person that constantly craves newness all the time, then I think in that context, you've got to be a bit more performance minded. If someone just always needs new classes, new workouts, new apps, like shiny novel things to keep them quote unquote motivated, then that's aligned to parts of training that really aren't going to yield the best results, because you do need consistent practice. So in that situation, I think it's smart to make sure you have some goals aligned to your training. Again, you go think about things that you can be working towards. It might be improving like a 5K run time. It might be working towards your first pull-up. So you need to be practicing 5Ks. You need to be practicing chin-ups. And that can be a really nice way also to kind of like keep focused on the plan overall. But even with that in place, I would still expect someone to have dips in mood and motivation, and that's okay. So hopefully that was useful. Hopefully also that was quite timely. And if this is the sort of thing that you would like help with in your own training, then I am available for online personal training.